This is the Seymour Duncan Powerstage 170, the most compact and affordable in Seymour Duncan's Powerstage series. It's a solid-state power amplifier for guitar, and let's start with getting specific about what that means. In a guitar amp, there are usually two main blocks of components. The first is the preamp, which raises your guitar signal to line level, usually features an equalizer of some sort, and often has some kind of variable gain stage in it to introduce distortion. And all preamps, even with no EQ or with the EQ set flat, will introduce some kind of tone shaping. The second block takes that line level signal, amplifies it, and gets it ready for your guitar cab. These are all, of course, layman's terms. The Powerstage is designed to be used as the second block, meaning it's the part that takes the signal from a preamp, makes it loud, and sends it to your guitar cab. Accordingly, on the back here you can see just two connections, one input for your preamp signal and one output for your guitar cab. It's 170 watts at 4 ohms, meaning just a little bit less at 8 ohms or 16 ohms, although watts don't directly correlate with volume, and into my 16 ohm Marshall cab, this thing is easily loud enough to backline a show. Seymour Duncan also make a Powerstage 200 and a Powerstage 700 that have more features than this one, including cab emulation and through stereo operation. The power sections of guitar amps also often have some kind of EQ shaping. For example, on my Jet City, you'll find a presence knob and a depth switch, which respectively affect the treble and bass response of the power amp, not the preamp. The Powerstage 170 features a 3-band EQ, which you can use interactively with your preamp EQ to tweak the sound with a great deal of precision. This is useful if, for instance, you're switching between several guitar cabs, or to adjust your amp sound to the room that you're in. Just an aside here, and I'm always surprised at how few people know this. The original purpose of a guitar amp's EQ section was just that, to adjust the sound of the guitar amp to suit the sound of the venue. Back in the 1940s and 50s, when the first dedicated guitar amps were first introduced, the goal was to make the amplifier as transparent as possible. The idea of amps having their own character wasn't thought of as desirable yet, so the equalizer on the amp was intended to tune the amp to the room sound. If you were in a bassy room, you'd turn up the treble and turn the bass down. If you were in a bright room, you'd do the opposite. Bear that in mind next time you're adjusting your amp's EQ before a show. Think about what the room sounds like and how you can balance your amplifier's EQ to match it. Seymour Duncan described the Powerstage as having a beautiful clean preamp section, and you can in fact plug your guitar straight into the input and get a sound. But it is a sound very similar to what you'd get from plugging your guitar into the effects return of a normal guitar amp, which is very flat response, even if you tweak the onboard EQ. It's not a bad sound at all, and could be ideal if you're, for example, a jazz guitarist and you want a very clean and direct sound. But if you're playing rock and roll, you probably want some kind of preamp ahead of it. I don't have a standalone clean preamp, so here I've taken a line from the Jet City's effect send into the Powerstage. So it's subtle, but to my ears it's closer to what I want from a guitar sound. In fact, it's a really good guitar sound, very clear and detailed as you'd expect from a clean power amp, but also very musical and dynamic. Another advantage here is my Jet City has a 20-watt EL84 power section that breaks up very early, so the amp doesn't have a lot of headroom, and if I'm playing at band volume, it's a little too overdriven. The Powerstage, on the other hand, is very clean at high volume, so it's like having a way more powerful version of the Jet City. If you do this with a valve amp, remember it'll still need to be plugged into a guitar cab or some kind of load box, so it sees the correct load, or you might damage your amp head. Or you can run both the amp's power section and the Powerstage into two different cabs, which gives you options for stereo and wet-dry effects and all kinds of experimentation. For example, I could blend the Jet City's driven power amp with the Powerstage's clean sound to get less overall breakup. I have two distortion pedals here that work as preamps. The first is the Seymour Duncan Diamond Head, a hot-rodded British-style distortion and boost pedal that I reviewed in my last video, which I'll link below. Here it is, plugged straight into the Powerstage. The other pedal is a Diesel VH4 Mark II, which has a dedicated preamp out. Here it is into the Powerstage, and I'll throw on a little bit of delay and reverb from the Walrus Audio Fathom and ARP87. I don't have an amp modeler or profiler in the studio, but that's clearly a good use case for the Powerstage. You've seen how this works as a big, clean Powerstage, so it stands to reason it would do a great job amplifying a Kemper or a Helix or a Quad Cortex. Its form factor is that of a big stomp box, and Seymour Duncan have done us the favor of not putting any annoying little feet on the underside, so this is a great candidate for putting some Velcro on and sticking it to your pedal board. If you're a touring artist, you could have a smallish board with just this and your amp modeler and take it as carry-on, and all you need to worry about is what cab the venues supply. This is not a sponsored video, and the Powerstage is on loan from Rossetti, but the links in the description are affiliated, so if you do buy anything through them, I will get a small cut. Otherwise, if you like the idea of supporting the channel, please leave me a like and a comment below, share this video, and of course you can subscribe to make sure you don't miss any more of my videos. If you really like my videos and you want to help me keep making them, then you can sponsor me on Patreon. All the relevant links are in the description, and thank you so much to my existing patrons. Does the Powerstage have any downsides? One thing to consider is because of the pedal's small form factor, there isn't any room in there for a big heatsink. So instead it's got a fan, and that fan is a little bit noisy. The thing to understand though is that the Powerstage 170 is a compromise. You're getting a lot of power in a very small box, and the trade-off is it isn't completely quiet. I don't know if it would be possible to put a silent fan in here. That said, this probably wouldn't be your first choice for a recording amp, and even if it was, you could probably just run a long speaker cable and put the Powerstage in another room. Problem solved. Either way, if you're playing at band volume, the fan isn't loud enough to be noticeable. My verdict is that this is a really cool piece of gear with a bunch of different applications, the most likely of which is as the power amp section of a modular pedal board rig, whether you're using pedal preamps or modelers. It looks really cool with its brushed aluminium faceplate, it's easy to use, and it seems pretty durable. I wouldn't hesitate to recommend it. So that's it. Thanks to Rossetti for supplying the Powerstage 170, thanks to Seymour Duncan, thanks as always to you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.